Hello, I'm Wayne Tabor, President of the Memphis Hotel Lodging Association. Welcome to the 18th annual presentation of the Southern Lodging Summit. Today, I am very excited that we are presenting you this conference virtually. We had planned to be live in Memphis at the Peabody Hotel on August 25th and 26th. But with today's COVID environment and local and state restrictions, virtual was our only option to present this program. Please enjoy our very exciting virtual video series. But before we get started, I'd like to take the time to thank the Peabody Hotel for being our host sponsor this year. And at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Memphis Hotel Lodging Association Board Chairman Doug Brown, President of the Peabody Hotel.
Well, thank you, Wayne. Good to be back. Welcome to the 18th annual Southern Lodging Summit. Wayne, I don't know if you remember, but 18 years ago, I started in Memphis. So this is my 18th summit and excited to be here. It would not be me if I didn't say I hate virtual meetings and new Zoom meetings, and I think it's highly important that our industry get out and start having meetings and prove to the world that we can do this well. But Wayne asked me to do this, so here I am. We do have to thank our sponsors, Intercontinental Hotel Group, thank you. Smith Travel Research, thank you. U.S. Foods companies, thank you very much, and they handle our foods here at the Peabody. Memphis Tourism, Kevin Kane and his team, and MFA, Marshall and Aaron, thank you. We appreciate it. Can't thank you all enough for everything that you've done. They're handling the messaging of the renovations of the Renaissance Convention Center and have done an outstanding job. We're almost finished with the renovations of the Convention Center, and it looks spectacular. Can't thank you all enough. It will be good to see all of you back here next year in Memphis, here maybe at the Peabody, but probably at the Convention Center. And I'm sure you're all excited to see it. So again, thank you, and let's get past 2020 and put all of this behind us. So without further ado, let me introduce a good friend of 18 years. He is a superstar in his own mind. I was told that I had to be nice in introducing him, so, and that was his wife that called me and said, please be sweet, so I'm going to be sweet, Wayne. But without further ado, from Pinkowski and Company, Chuck Pinkowski, welcome.
Well, Wayne and Doug, thank you so much for that information and the introduction to this 18th Southern Lodging Summit. And Doug, I didn't realize that you started at the same time we started this Southern Lodging Summit development. And I went to the chef here at the Peabody Hotel, and we are having an 18th anniversary cake prepared just for your participation in this 18th Southern Lodging Summit. So thanks, Doug Brown, for all of your support. This year, our Visionary Viewpoints is titled Crisis Leadership, and our moderator is Isaac Collazo. Isaac has always been our moderator for this session. Isaac is Vice President of Competitive Intelligence for Intercontinental Hotels Group, where he's responsible for ensuring effective cross-utilization of intelligence in a manner that optimizes IHG's revenue and industry share. That sounds pretty complicated, doesn't it? But he's really great at it. He oversees a broad range of functional responsibilities, including competitive performance analysis, predictive analytics, modeling, and interpreting the macroeconomic environment. Before IHG, Isaac was Vice President in Strategic Brand Knowledge with Marriott International, where he led their guest satisfaction program and competitive analysis group. He also served at Promise Hotel Corporation. His responsibilities there included the administration and management of market and customer tracking systems and the development of communication of strategic brands. Isaac began his hospitality career with La Quinta Inns. He holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and radio, television, and film from Trinity University and an MBA from the University of Texas in Austin. I guess that's why he's so good at what he does. Isaac has moderated for us at the Southern Lodging Summit almost from the very beginning 18 years ago. He has a great panel and a very contemporary, challenging subject. Pay attention, and you'll be a lot smarter when you finish at the end of this panel. So Isaac, take it away.
Thank you, Chuck, and welcome to the Visionary Leaders Panel. Our panelists are sure to bring a wealth of insights on what we are all facing today. Let me start by introducing them. First is Kristie Dickinson. She is EVP of Marketing, Business Development, and Client Relations for CHMWarnick, a global hotel asset management and owner advisory services company. She has more than 25 years of hospitality industry experience and is a founding member of CHMWarnick. Kristie is actively involved with the Castell Project, advancing diversity in hospitality leadership, serving as a member of the organization's podium committee, and as a Castell at College program facilitator. Welcome, Kristie. Suzie Hall is the founder and president of Cornerstone Design, a design firm servicing the hospitality, commercial, and multifamily markets. Highly regarded as a design and procurement expert with a specialty in modular design, she launched the Cornerstone Collective in early 2020. Her work in the lead and healthcare markets is significant, with 20 lead projects to her credit, as well as over 24 healthcare projects where wellness and sustainability were the primary focus. She is also a founding partner of Open Spaces Northwest, an energy efficiency and sustainability consulting firm serving the hospitality, commercial, and other markets. Welcome, Suzie. Nimisha Patel is a second-generation hotelier who started in the hospitality business with her parents. She is managing partner of View Hotels, where she oversees operational and development responsibilities. Their hotels are located throughout San Antonio and surrounding area. A member of AHOA since 2006, Nimisha now serves on the AHOA Board of Directors as the Female Director, Western Division. She is also a governor for Best Western International. Welcome, Nimisha. And finally, John Koshivos is Vice President and Managing Director of Development for the Southeastern U.S. for Hilton Worldwide. John is responsible for the development of Hilton's entire portfolio of brands except the Waldorf Astoria and Conrad hotels. Prior to joining Hilton Worldwide, John was with Hyatt Hotels in various positions. Welcome, John. All right, let's get started. I think right now we're living in a historic time for the industry. What I'd like to begin with is, what are you thinking about? How do you feel? What worries you? And what gives you hope? Let's start with Nimisha.
We're definitely living in historic times. I think that the thing that I think about the most, and probably the thing that sort of worries me as well, is just survival. It's a time of really uncertainty. It's a time of uncertainty. We have so many moving parts. We're having to pivot in so many directions. I feel confident, but at the same time, I feel a little conservative as well. Or you have to take that approach, especially as a business owner and a manager. And when you're operating hotels, you really just don't know what's going to happen. So those are sort of my worries. What gives me hope is that I've noticed that the communities and even our employees and our staff has really come together to really try to navigate through this in a very positive manner. You see it throughout the industry. I mean, even when guests walk in, there are people that are giving up so many benefits and so many things that they normally would have wanted in their stays, but they're doing so to just make sure that they take that safety precaution and that the industry moves forward going.
It's interesting, Nimisha, you talked about survival and safety. Let's go, Kristie, because obviously you guys are managing a group of hotels and looking out for owners as well. What are you seeing? How do you feel about the current situation? what does survival safety mean in your realm of the world?
Right. Again, my immediate thought is always how best to help our clients. And so I think you hit the nail right on the head there. And right now, at this very moment, our clients are really looking to us for guidance on what the recovery trajectory is going to look like. And not just generally for the industry, but really for their specific properties. And that type of an exercise right now requires a very detailed, almost forensic level, an assessment right now to really try to develop what those likely scenarios might look like. And I think that at this particular juncture where forbearance periods are starting to come to an end, where we're seeing, no more reserves to tap into, fee relief at various levels are starting to wane, and hotel owners are really faced with some of the biggest decisions, and they need a clear strategy on how to weather the months ahead. So, for us and sort of the immediacy of all this, that's where we're focused here and now. In terms of a concern, I think everyone's really looking for positive trends to signal that travel may be slowly returning. And I think we caught a little glimmer of that over the summer months as the leisure travel helped to prop up properties, particularly resorts and others that were in, advantageous drive-to destinations. But, the big question really is that sustainable? Is leisure going to have a longer tail this fall, absent any sort of meaningful return to corporate travel? So these are, one or two of just a myriad of issues that we're trying to wrap our heads around and, look deep into our crystal balls to help give our clients that type of vision for planning purposes.
And John, as you think about it, so again, thinking about some of the words and phrases that are coming up already, clear strategy, owner relief. Obviously, Hilton Hotels, one of the world's largest brand companies, is actively involved in helping its owners, its brands. Can you speak to that? What are you guys specifically doing, and how are you seeing the rest of this year turn out and into next year?
Well, we're doing a number of things with our owners across the board. Obviously, our concern is with our owners, our guests, and our employees to make sure that we are presenting the best environment possible for success into the future. There's not much we can do about what's happened in the past, and most of our planning is around how we are going to exit this pandemic and come out stronger than we were before. A lot of the items and issues that we put in place, from our Clean Stay program, going on down the line to enhancing Hilton Honors, our cancellation policies have been revamped. All of this is done with the intent of trying to help our owners, help our guests experience travel again. The one thing I'd like to make a point of here is that while we are all concerned about what's going to happen on a going forward basis, the ultimate question comes down to the optimism that we always have within our industry. This is a very optimistic group of people, and we are always going to look for the positive in things to drive our business in the right fashion. So I think as we progress through the next few months, we've seen some stabilization in the markets. We've seen some pickup in business. As Kristie mentioned, a lot of it has been on the leisure side of the equation. But as we go forward, we're hoping to see, and we're starting to see, some positive trends develop on the other side of the equation as well. So if we can keep a quote-unquote second wave not becoming a big issue for us in the industry, I see a positive light at the end of the tunnel as we move into 21 and beyond.
Makes sense. And Suzie, specifically for you on the design side, what are you seeing? What are you thinking about in terms of safety today, but then also safety into the future? Because I'd assume any design that you put in place today is going to last 5 to 10 years. So I'm sure you're looking at a much longer roadmap instead of just a specific event like what we're going through today.
Yeah, there's a lot on the design side and procurement right now, especially in renovations, but also new builds. And we have several projects moving forward in both categories, which is great to see. And so we're taking the time to review the material specifications. We know that a lot of the upholstery materials especially won't withstand the rigorous cleaning protocols that are so necessary right now. And so informing our owners, educating them, that's where our dozens of LEED and healthcare projects informs the design bringing those to the table so that we can have intelligent conversations and help them to make the right decisions. And what we're finding through our work is we're able to obtain even better priced alternatives, say, to some of the brand standards, which we're not trying to move those out of the way, but we're just trying to bring forward some of the better solutions to our owners right now in the midst of a pandemic. I think we all were hoping we'd be mostly through it by now, and the reality is it's going to continue for some time. And on the procurement side, same thing, really encouraging ourselves, if we do the procurement or someone else does the purchasing, not to change out the specification, because the specification is so important now, especially with moisture barriers and Green Guard certification, indoor air quality, all those things that have been important, but they're even more so important in today's landscape, so that the travelers do feel safe and they feel well taken care of.
And as you look out in your crystal ball, I mean, what are some things that you think will stick that you would never have considered in terms of a design principle for hotels and or any other hospitality venture?
Well, I think a lot of hard surface flooring in the guest rooms is happening. You know, not that carpet's bad, but there's a really stringent specification that should be happening now with carpet. So hard surface flooring, starting with the LEED movement in the mid-2000s, will continue to go into that wellness and health and safety category in the guest rooms, and how to offset that, right, and create a comfortable, warm, and welcoming room. I just traveled a few times in the last month, and one of the rooms I stayed in was so Spartan. It was like, you know, going into a bare bones gym, and there's got to be a better way. And that's what we're spending a lot of our days doing right now, is figuring out that balance.
Makes sense. I think we're going to switch a little bit, so as we're still in the opening phases of this conversation. Now I want to really, we know the time we're in, very difficult times. How has that changed your leadership style? So John, we're going to start with you on this question.
Thanks, Isaac. Leadership has to adapt all the time. I think that one thing that we have done a very good job of is we've opened up more communication channels. I talk to my team virtually on a daily basis, once, twice a day, but more importantly than that, we're reaching out to various ownership groups virtually every week, and we compile a list of concerns, comments, positive signs, etc., and we share that within the company as to what our owners are thinking, what our guests are thinking, and how our team members can best react and be proactive to the changes in the market. There is no one set strategy for doing this, but I believe that the more communication that you can have with your teams and with us, you're going to ultimately be able to formulate the best plan to come out of this pandemic and this situation that we are currently in our business.
And Nimisha, as you think about communication, obviously you're running properties, you have the family business, you know, what are you doing differently to keep you to communicate, or your leadership style actually within your properties?
You know, it's a really good question. We've always been a company that's tried to be as transparent as possible, or at least keep the lines of communication open as much as possible. But I think the emphasis on that has just gotten to be, it's just imperative that we do that so much more now. Not even just communicating with our managers at the hotel levels, but really kind of just keeping the open door to employees even, really trying to know what it feels like to be in their shoes. We've gotten our hands dirty. We've had to. You know, and I think that's everybody in the industry. You know, all these mid-scale and upper-scale hotels, just to survive, they just really had to, you know, take a back seat and really understand where everybody is coming from, because I think that's going to be so important going forward.
And Kristie, what have you started doing that's different pre-pandemic now versus being in the pandemic?
Yeah, you know, good question. I'm thinking about some of the things that John alluded to, and you know, certainly we considered ourselves nimble pre-COVID, but I would say that, you know, kind of being thrust into contending with the unfamiliar and really the steep learning curve that has had to sort of come as a result of that. You know, we weren't able to operate in our traditional roles. And so I think as a group and also individually, just trying to figure out where our skill sets were and where else we could apply those across the organization so that we could all, come together and kind of adapt to this new normal has really been a big part of, what we've done differently, sort of thrown the old org chart out the window. And it was really everyone step up in the areas where you're, able and most comfortable to add value right now. And so that's been a big part for us. And then, this may not be different, but something that I've tried to follow quite often as a leader during this time is, in the midst of chaos, if you can find any spark of normalcy, it's really a powerful tool. And by that, I mean, trying to maintain some level of routine, sort of from the old days, keeping our staff meetings going. We went forward with our summer internship plan. We actually had promotions occur during this period. And with a lot changing so quickly, just trying to remember to interject a sense of normalcy and a little bit of routine is something that I'm constantly thinking about, because I really think it projects a sense of, safety and comfort for the team, and also allows them to focus so hard on all of the issues that, we have to focus on every day.
It makes sense, the idea of sense of normalcy. And Suzie, when we think of that normalcy, we've seen, people changing their leadership style, communication style. What have you actually stopped doing that you used to do before because of pandemics in terms of a communication and leadership style? If anything.
Yeah, I feel like I've amplified, right? I'm trying to think of what I've stopped doing. I think I've stopped worrying about the little things and focused on the big things. And the communication is so key. So like John and Kristie both spoke about, just those, we kick off every morning with a daily game plan. We have staff in multiple states, other countries, and that's so important. And actually, I just thought of something. I've welcomed the talk about dogs and background noise and house workers and water delivery in Mexico. And I've learned so much more about my team members than I would have, I think, in the past. And as a leader, I think it's important to encourage that and allow that in these daily check-ins, because that's reality.
That makes sense. And going back to Kristie, because thinking about this, we've learned a lot about our team members, obviously, because we're all looking inside our homes and, various surroundings. Obviously, you've had to make some very difficult management decisions over the past 6 months. How did you incorporate your values with those decisions? How did you go about it? Because again, this is such unprecedented times that this wasn't about just cutting costs for the sake. This is about survival. And so how did you go about that?
Right. Well, operationally, this is a point you bring up, operationally, trying to balance sort of increased workload and the demands on our team with the financial hardships of our clients, and, really trying to stay by their side and make sure that, we're guiding them through this just like we would any other period of time. There's a famous quote that we use, we've sort of adopted it as the mantra within our company, which is, we build good ships as a profit if we can, and not at a loss if we must, but we build good ships. And I can't imagine another time where that quote is more relevant today. And I think, it finally clicked for some folks, who may not have been with us for quite as long and have sort of heard this, but this is something that we've been able to come back to as a guiding principle as a company. And I'll also add that one of our very first staff meetings, when things really started to materialize, probably in about mid-March, rather than opening up with sort of the doom and gloom, we spent a whole staff meeting rehashing our company's core values. And we went down and ticked down each one of them and really related them to the times that we're in now. And I would say that exercise, nobody was saying that they knew what was going to happen, but we were reiterating the core values as a company. And it was a very unifying experience to kind of have everyone hear what those core values meant in today's, amidst everything going on. So it's really been a comfort to have those to fall back on and to discuss openly as a group.
And you think of the core values, you think of the increased communication. John, what are you most proud of over the last 6 months?
Well, just to piggyback on what everyone has been saying, especially Kristie's comments, I think, when you look at Hilton as a company, we won the best places to work last year. It's a monumental achievement. It's something we're extremely proud of. But that goes hand in hand with having the right people doing the right jobs and communicating and creating a culture of unity within the company. And the hardest thing that we've had to do is shake up that culture a little bit in order to get through the situations that we're currently in. The hardest thing to do is to build that appropriate culture. The second hardest thing to do is to keep it together and keep it moving in the right direction. So I think, going to your comment and your question, we have changed the way we communicate, right? You can't over communicate enough today. And however that may be, whether you have to take a call at 7 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning, I want to make sure that I am finding a methodology to keep that work-life balance in place to the best of my ability. But most importantly than that, I want to make sure that the team that is around me, that works with me, and I never use the word my team. I don't think that that's appropriate. It's our team. We work as a unit. We try to drive in the same direction. And if we're able to do that, we will get the results that we need, not only for our company, but for our owners and our associates. So I'm a believer of over-communication today. I am a believer of using all the tools that we never used to use before. If you think about Zoom, if you think about Teams, if you think about, how much you text, I get less phone calls today than I got a year ago. I'm doing far more Zoom calls, Teams calls, et cetera, and you can share and collaborate with a lot more information. So we're leveraging the technology that's there today, not only in our hotels, but from a corporate staff level and on an individual level when we're communicating with our teams to get to an accomplished goal.
Agreed with that. And thinking about the increased communication, that is so true. I think all of us are over communicating. So it's interesting that everyone continues to reiterate that, because I do think it's what we're all doing as leaders. And Nimisha, when you think about being a leader at this stage of our lives, what is the most difficult part of that? What are you finding that is really different this time around because of the pandemic, and of course, and because of your looking out for so many aspects of your employees, your business, et cetera?
I think the hardest thing for anyone being a leader is really just trying to take a step back and know what everybody else is feeling and wanting. For me, I think it's regardless, whether you're an owner or a developer, or you're an employee at a hotel, or even an organization, or you're a mom or a dad, we're all kind of going through the same struggles. And in our own way, we all have to be leaders in order to bring up maybe some of those people that are not strong enough. I think that one of the hardest things for me to really try to get out of our team has been really learning what their strengths and weaknesses are, because we've had to let go of so many people. It's probably one of the hardest things that anybody's had to do. It wasn't by choice. It was, it was kind of forced upon us from a financials perspective. But, just really trying to hone in on where do people fit in the right places, and where do you extract some of the best things about them, or best qualities and characteristics that they could bring to the table. And one of the really nice things to have seen is that people have stepped up and they have wanted to do things, and probably more so than they ever have before, because we're in a time of crisis. I mean, either you get on board or you kind of get left behind. So, and I hate to say that, but fortunately, everybody has really done so, and it's been really great to see.
And Suzie, before we get off this topic on leadership, what do you see as your top priorities as a leader at the moment?
Well, I think it's important as leaders that we're taking care of ourselves first and foremost, right? So that we're healthy and strong, and we can come in every day and every evening, like John mentioned, and be available, be able to give, be able to support. And if we're not doing that for ourselves, being healthy and eating well and sleeping, then it's hard for us as leaders to be able to give. And then being confident in the face of uncertainty. I think is huge right now as a leader. So again, no crystal balls here. We don't know what tomorrow is going to hold, but being confident in what we can control, what we are doing, and encouraging optimism and purpose in our work. And I think that there is a lot of purpose in our work right now.
In terms of being confident, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to get into some development questions and thoughts on development. So, John, in terms of your confidence, what do you see in the future in terms of hotel development? How do you characterize the environment now? Which I can probably answer that question. But then, what do you think about the future? How do you think things are going to really materialize and change? Are they going to change, or do we go back to the way it was in terms of development?
Well, look, I don't have a crystal ball to tell you exactly where it's going to end up or how it's going to go. Kristie will probably tell you the same thing as Nimisha will. And look, I think, right now we are in a period of cautiousness for people that are looking to develop hotels. You can kind of break things down maybe into three camps. There are those right now that are sitting back, extremely conservative. They want to ride out this storm, see what's going to happen in their markets, manage expectations as to what they're doing today and how business is going to look in the near-term future. You have another group that is going to potentially be opportunistic right now. There are going to be people that are saying construction costs may be moderating or coming down a bit. Land costs are coming down a bit. I know I'm not going to open this hotel for, say, 2 or 3 or 4 years. So there is another group that is being a little bit opportunistic and really looking at development 12, 24, 36, and 48 months down the road, and are taking actions to look at developing and securing a hotel site in the very near future. And then you've got the other group that is going to potentially be looking at distressed assets. We know there's going to be issues with loans that are out there. There might be a lot of conversion opportunities that are going to come to place. Independent hotels might be in play for some potential branding, whether it be, to one of the collection brands, whether it be one of mine or others. So I think optimism is going to be there on a going forward basis. The question is, how cautious is it going to be and how aggressive is it going to be? I know that sounds a little crazy, but that's where I see developers dividing into the different camps. I am pretty optimistic that things, while they are not going to get back to normal in the next few months, we know that, we get that. First half of 2021 could be a little bit challenging, but we're starting to see some bright spots. And I think after that, we start to ramp up in an appropriate fashion as we go forward. Again, it's not a crystal ball. It's not a prediction, but that's the sentiment we're getting out of people that are out in the field with various owners. It's going to be a wait and see for some and opportunistic for others.
Now, Kristie, you're working with other, obviously your management side of the business and asset ownership. What are you thinking about in terms of development? How do you see it changing, or do you see it changing? Do you see the type of assets that people invest in to be different from what they are today? Or again, is it, what are your thoughts on development in general?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it from the lender side, and again, from where we've been sitting and all the conversations that we've been having over the months, on behalf and with our ownership groups. I think that for the most part, lenders have really exercised a great deal of flexibility and a general willingness to work with their borrowers over these past 6 months on existing assets. Now, that being said, I do believe that most have sort of hit the internal pause button on the topic of new development. So, I think when it comes to debt for both debt for acquisition and also financing new development. So I do think that they'll be a little constrained there on the lender side. And, what I'm seeing on my end from some of the other investors that we work with is nearly everyone we're speaking to right now, they're interested in raising funds to deploy rescue capital so that they may go out and, help and bail out existing properties and, interested in trying to help bridge that gap and fund turnarounds. And also, as John alluded to, take an opportunity to, see what comes out on the other side of this. I think in the short term, we're seeing more opportunities and interest from the capital side in trying to get into existing and bailout, as well as looking ahead to when this, series of foreclosures may occur, and there may be some real opportunities for acquisition in the market.
And Nimisha, thinking about your role with AHOA, what is AHOA thinking about in terms of rescue capital, helping owners, helping members? What kind of relief funds or programs has the association put in place or is thinking about?
Well, the association doesn't take the position to be able to financially help our members, but what we really try to do is advocate for our members. So recently we've been, we obviously have meetings with all different kinds of brands, and we really go to them to try to bring to the table a lot of the financial difficulty that members have had over the last few months. And not only that, but even going forward, we recently had a board meeting, and we're talking about and comparing a lot of the different brands and what kind of relief that they're giving these members, whether it be through royalties or marketing fees, or maybe some of the fees that are not really performing or doing anything for properties right now. I think what's happened in the past already, the last few months, it's gone. We really can't go back and give back for that. But what's really important for us to think about right now is that, this industry is probably not going to turn around for the positive. I mean, maybe not until, 2022. So we're really just trying to hold afloat and make sure that we have some plans in place, and that the brands are really thinking about what's really going to monetarily benefit our members. And even though they're, we're paying fees and we're doing all of these things, and maybe development is also, obviously development has slowed down for all the brands. It's just, we have to make sure that the line items that we're really discussing are going to be ones that impact and make a difference going forward. So, and it's really hard to do because we're really uncertain about what's going to happen. I think that going into the first and second quarter of next year is going to tell a lot of what's going to happen for the end of the rest of the year. So that's what we do from a HOA standpoint, and obviously advocating on a legal level, like federal and state level. We've just really tried to make sure that there's nothing in the pipeline that's going to really hurt our members across the board.
And when you think about, so you're working with AHOA and you're working with your membership for the application and helping, further along the industry as a whole. Mm-hmm. When you think about View now, now you are operating hotels, you are in a survival mode. What are you doing differently in terms of operations? And do you think the plans you put in place or the new procedures, are you going to maintain them, or do they go away after the pandemic?
No, I think that the changes that have happened right now, our first and foremost priority is just safety for our guests and for our staff. We obviously are making the difficult decisions on transitioning certain things, whether it be breakfast or whether it be design or whether it be like how we're operating, to make sure that our money is going where it really matters. So that from an owner's perspective, I think everybody does that across the board. But going forward, I don't see that some of these things are going to go back to what they were normally. I think that we're going to see there has to be a balance in design, right? Like we want to make sure that customers are coming into our rooms and they not only feel comfort, but they also feel safe. So that's going to be a challenge going forward. I don't think that we're going to go back to having multiple things in our rooms, because I just don't, I don't think that the guests are ever going to feel safe again, because whether COVID-19 may go away, but there may be something else that comes up later, right? So I think that this is just something that we have to think of as an industry and as consumers. But yeah, I think that whatever changes do impact our industry, and as owners, I think it'll be for the greater good. I think it's really going to streamline our operations as well. And it gives us the ability to be able to really think about what's important and what's really driving our bottom line.
And Suzie, you're the best person to answer. Safety and comfort. That's what you're designing into right at the moment. So, as you continue to think about this, you talked about how even the new protocols are more difficult on furniture and things of that sort. So, truly, how do you put it all together? How do you make it work at a cost point so that View can buy the new materials as well? So.
Yeah, and that's a great question. That's where I think our work in the lead realm really comes into play. So there's no perfect property or project out there, right? So identifying what's most important for the property, for the owner, for the brand. And we have a filtergram that we have all the different considerations: performance, cleanability, disinfectability, sustainability, off-gassing, environmental impact, price, all that. And so we put it through a filtergram on all those considerations. And then there's building certification and LEED certification, healthy buildings. There's so much information out there that I think even in the design world, people are just trying to figure out what's the right answer, and there isn't one right answer. It's taking a lot of diligence, a lot of focus, a lot of research, and putting it into each property and each project at one time. And so what's right for one project, one property might not be right for another, especially based on existing conditions. So it's a lot, and it's also an exciting time for innovation, right? A lot of innovation is spurred during times of pandemics and really, really hard to press times. And so that's really our mindset right now, is how can we improve every single touch point that we have as a design and procurement firm?
Well, it's interesting you said something. So have you seen or have you done any about faces? So projects that are in play right now, did you have to just stop? We're going to have to rethink this. Has that happened as well because of that? Okay, so.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just had a presentation yesterday on that topic to a hotel owner with 5 renovations that we're designing.
Well, okay. As we continue to think about this, in terms of, John, I'm going to go, we're still in the operations and guest side, or actually let's go to Kristie. There was a recent study, I'm trying to remember which conference it was, where they showed STR and AirDNA presented some data. And it showed that the home sharing side was actually doing much better than the hotel side in terms of occupancy. Now, again, they did it against the whole industry. So obviously we all know that groups and meetings hotels are a big drag right now in our industry. So it might have been better to segregate it. But what are your thoughts on short-term rentals, and how do you think their play now, given that they've seen more increased popularity because of the pandemic? What happens after the pandemic, or what are your thoughts on it in totality?
Right. It's a good question. Yes, I did see the study, and I think a large part of it, it's no surprise that sort of privacy and seclusion in the early stages of travel, when people are initially getting out there and sort of testing the waters, that that would certainly, a private home would trump the desire to stay at a hotel with a lot of shared and public spaces on a lot of fronts. But I think part of the usage really is reflective of the return to leisure segments first. I know that they've been driving the early recovery, and I think that we're seeing more of a noticeable gap, in large part because of that. People are staying out of the real urban centers, and so whether this is a trend that remains, not sure. But I would say that I think for any hotels, and many of them are doing so, are really trying to shift gears and market much more so to that traveler and the things that are appealing to them, and maybe some of the same aspects that are drawing them to the shared homes in the first place. So, offering up those extended stay pricing, and perhaps marketing, multiple rooms for your family to spread out. And again, just really trying to rest on the brand clean and comfort promise to promote that properties are safe places. So not sure if this is a long-term trend. And I do think, I can't remember which report it was, but I did hear something. I think that report was an August report that you were referring to earlier, or maybe July. And then there was a report that came out after that would suggest that there was a little bit of a tightening of the gap there. And frankly, it could, in many markets, have to do with which hotels were even open in the first place.
Of course.
Within our own portfolio at any given time, very early on, we were almost a 50-50 split of those that had to, suspend their operations temporarily. So, trying not to get too hung up on complete leisure shift and allegiance to home share, because me included, I guess I'm biased, but I can't wait to take my family back to a resort and enjoy all the amenities and things that it has to offer. So time will tell.
I agree. John, your comments from the brand point of view.
Yeah, look, what Kristie said is spot on. I mean, you couldn't say it any better than that. The numbers are a bit skewed, right? Because early on in this entire pandemic, you look at the major hotels that were in our city centers, a lot of those hotels closed. A lot of those hotels took a while to get skewed. But to Kristie's point, and from a branding standpoint, I think that there is a ridiculous amount of pent-up demand for people to be able to get their families together, get to a resort, or go visit a city where they can feel comfortable, safe, and experience what that destination has to offer. And so I think that the leisure segment certainly is what carried us through the summer, and actually quite what we're seeing in our numbers into September. The leisure season seems to have extended a bit based on how you look at what school districts were going back or in person. I think there was a little bit of a bounce there that extended well into September. So I think you have to be careful about looking at the numbers that have happened over the past, call it 6 months, and start modeling as to how we traditionally modeled where our business was going and how it compared to the home sharing environment. Excuse me. I am a firm believer that the demand levels for people to get out and experience something different other than their own homes, or quite honestly, somebody else's home, which really isn't going to be much different than their own, is growing daily. And I'm looking forward to the day when we can leverage that sentiment.
I agree with you. And the term I read this morning, I believe it's either in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, was called schoolcation. That people are, because their kids are online school, they're able to have school anywhere. So that may help our industry as well, because you can be in a resort and then do the online learning and then get into the pool in the afternoon. So a new term, schoolcation. So the other thing I'm thinking about, again, being a data guy, so we're talking about data. Nimisha, how are you using data differently than what you did before? Are you using data differently? I guess that's the better question.
On? Okay. Yeah, data. I think that, I think we're just reading about everything that's not only just in my industry, but kind of all over the place, because you want to know what trends are happening and you want to kind of relate them to whether or not it's applicable to you or not. We have several properties in San Antonio, and I'll give you an example. We talk about the leisure market or the corporate market coming back, and there's a little hesitancy, right? Like, you don't know what's going to happen. We've been steady at a couple of places with some contracts, and then we've been steady with some places with just leisure business. So that's been great. Going forward, I really have optimism that things are going to start picking up, especially now that the holidays are coming around and people are just itching to get out. And I think that having all these safety precautions from the brands and instilling them into our properties, and we haven't heard anything bad in the industry that has happened to any really hotel. So I think that's all positive. And I think that people are going to see that and want to start traveling again. And again, back to your point with the data, I think that we just have to make sure that we're not just staying in a bubble in our own space, but we're really just trying to read and make sure we're well informed of what's going on around the country, because, it may not happen in Texas, but if it happens in, New Jersey, it could affect us later on. So I think that's really been my intake, is just making sure that I'm, not only just comparing apples to apples, but also apples to oranges, because on any given day, it could happen to us.
And Kristie, what about yourself? Same question regarding data, because I know you guys also use a lot of data in your operations.
Sure. I think Nimisha hit it with a nail on the head. And, we tend to be pretty focused on the markets where our hotels are today. But I'll tell you, I have never followed Chinese hotel markets closer than I have today. I think just as sort of keep my eye on the brighter future of what this looks like on the other side. So definitely considering some different data sources. And, if you were to tell me a year ago that I would have a on my favorites, the John Hopkins link and CDC direct, connection here. I would have thought you were crazy, but I think for us, we're looking at a lot of the same sources. I think what's changed for us is how, really how we had to modify our models to look at that data. So it's less of comparisons to budget or comparisons to forecasts. It's very much a week by week, trying to find recovery trends at a much different comparisons. And the other thing I'll say with data is we're finding that we're turning more to our internal data now, more so than we ever have before. Having a portfolio of 70 hotels across the country has been a really great opportunity for us to look and learn to see as different pockets and markets are, maybe reopening at different paces. It's almost like having a little microcosm of the whole country with data and understanding what's working, what's not working. And thankfully, we have the business intelligence systems that really help us track this data. And I think what we've been so focused on these past 6 months is how do we mine that data now for the most meaningful results? And how we're using it today is far different than we've ever used it before. But thankful to have that data at our fingertips for sure.
And when you think about data, now keep thinking on data, but now let's think about employees and data. How are you monitoring your employees in terms of their well-being, how they're feeling in terms of engagement and those typical scores that we used to look at when we're normally inside a building, now we're at home, and how you're maintaining those engagement scores and basically engagement? I guess that's the right question.
Is that back to me?
Yeah, back to you, Kristie. Yes, sorry.
I think we've all had to, and I hate this word because it's like the most overplayed word, but we've all had to pivot and adjust in how we foster engagement. And I think that how we engage is different, for every employee. I think it's really, and maybe a little easier to do with a group like ours that's a medium size, but I think it's really trying to recognize where everyone's head is at. One epiphany I had early on in sort of talking to my peers was that, there's probably a good third of our group that have graduated within the last 10 years. So all they've known is straight up to the moon. They've been riding this wave, and not to say that us older, wiser folks, can tell the tales of the past shock events, but I think just recognizing where other people's heads are at and understanding that you need to be able to give them a perspective that, here's what it was like before when we went through this. Here were some of the things that eventually got us out of. And so that's just one example of trying to put ourselves in shoes of the people that we work with and understanding what their needs are and what's going to help them, stay productive, stay motivated, stay positive. And in a lot of instances, it's just bringing perspective around the times that we're in right now.
And Suzie, thinking about that, because obviously in your line of work, there's a lot of creativity. And normally you sit down and collaborate and really discuss design, template, palettes, the whole works. How are you doing that in this era? And how do you maintain that engagement and keep everyone really focused in on the work?
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot different. So early on when we were all working from home, it was just kind of, okay, let's level set. Some of our projects have gone on pause. Let's take a few days, kind of catch our breath and figure out the best path forward. And then shortly thereafter, because I live in the state of Idaho, I was able to go into our studio. And so I was the only one coming in. And I just kind of embraced, I laid out stuff all over the studio, all the samples and all the drawings and all that sort of thing, and really dove in and then shared that with the team via Zoom. It's not the same when you're holding up a sample, like, see this and see the light and this is the texture. But we make the best of it and try to have a little bit of just open-mindedness, right? Because there was no other way. And then shipping things, the brands have been great about doing digital presentations versus shipping physical samples. But we created a culture of being okay with it not being normal. And now we send samples to our different team members in different places. We talk about, okay, who needs to see this? Do we print the drawings? We've gone more digital, right? So we're more focused on using technology. And personally, I print less, which is probably a good thing. So there's been some good shifts that have come out of it. I don't think it's ever going to be back to, we had multiple locations. We pulled out of a physical lease in Phoenix due to the pandemic. We hadn't been there in months. And so being flexible, just figuring out the path forward, but having a great dedicated team that wants to figure it out, that are creatives. We're usually pretty good problem solvers, and it's been fascinating. And I think our clients have appreciated it as well.
And Nimisha, I mean, obviously keeping with the employee theme at the moment, obviously you're right in the front lines, you're serving guests, your team members are serving guests. And so there's a lot more, I would imagine, emphasis on safety of your employees, not only your guests, but your employees. How have you changed the way you're helping your employees be engaged, motivated, and successful at their jobs?
Yeah, Isaac, I think the biggest thing here is, I know we've said it so many times, but just communication, right? So whether we are able to get in front of our staff and our management on a daily basis or not, I think it's really important that we've always just kind of left those lines of communication open and fluid. We've been really flexible. I think the flexibility has allowed a lot of our staff to be able to produce more work, and not only more work, but better work. It gives them, everybody's got struggles, whether it be at home or at work or just in their personal life. So I think for us, on an operation and management level, we've just really had to make sure that it's not cookie cutter every day, and it's not cookie cutter at every place, to be honest. So just making sure that we understand where everyone's coming from. There's so many less people now, so it's a little bit easier, but at the same time, every place and every location has a different culture. And we've always been a company that's instilled kind of a culture of family, and we've always had that open door policy, but it's just gotten so much more important now that, I think that they really find the value and importance in that. So it hasn't been too difficult, but at the same time, we just have to stay consistent and keep doing it.
And John, thinking about, again, on the employee side, what kind of hacks have you found on Zoom? What's helping you make those Zoom meetings more engaging, fun, whatever those right adjectives are?
Cocktails.
That's
how we do it. Now, look, we will do, you go through your progression of meetings and you get through your serious stuff. And then occasionally I'll just schedule one where we say, okay, guys and ladies, 4:30 today. Let's just get on a quick one, have a drink in your hand. Let's talk about what's going on, see how your families are doing, keep everybody connected, and lighten up the mood, right? You've got to find that balance of work and home life, but with everybody being stuck in their houses for the most part, let's give a distraction of sorts where they can talk about something that they may want to talk about. I'm not in a hotel any longer. My operational days are long over from 30 plus years ago, but I take some of the things that you used to learn and do back then still apply today, right? So as Kristie said, and Suzie and Nimisha said, communication's the key. We've talked about communication all along throughout this panel today, but I think you learn different ways to communicate. Engage with what people are going through at home. Make sure that their families are okay. Find the best ways to motivate them. Don't worry about the dog that ran behind your Zoom meeting the day before and somebody might have gotten annoyed or whatever. We got to roll with it. And we've got to become more adaptable to some of these changes. We will go back to the older way of doing things the way we did, traveling a lot more face-to-face meetings. But in the meantime, we ought to look at this as an opportunity to embrace some of the new technology so that when the time comes, we can blend both parts of the old and the new and find the best path forward to communicate, to explore, and to advance our individual goals.
I agree with that. Got a question from the audience. I think it'll be for John and Kristie, and then I also have one for Nimisha. So the first question is, what are your thoughts regarding the financial side, CMBS foreclosures, and the sale of those properties? So Kristie or John, whichever you want to go first.
I'll let Kristie start.
Well, I can speak to reports that we're hearing of this pending tsunami, right? I think that it's reported that there's never been a higher default rate within hotels within the CMBS category ever. So I think something's going to happen, and I'll let John tell you when.
Look, some of it might start happening here in the fourth quarter. There's a little bit of that going on right now. The question is going to be when these assets go back to the servicer, the master servicer, when an asset is going to be taken over by another party, how's it being valued? And is there going to be a gap in what the value of that hotel is versus what equity is remaining in the hotel, or what that owner might have to put back into the asset? So I don't think there's going to be an easy out. There's going to be a lot of back and forth going on, because valuations on the assets are going to be dictating what people are going to pay for the assets as they try to take them over. So I think we have a little bit of a ways to go before we get to the final piece of that puzzle. And it's going to be a learning process as we go forward. I think, with traditional lenders, it's going to be slightly different, obviously. I think that's going to be an easier is the wrong, let's strike that out on this recording, is going to be a more manageable situation to navigate through versus the CMBS side of things.
Agree with that. And changing gears a little bit, another question from the audience. Nimisha, we're thinking about going back to AHOA and its advocacy role. How do you think the local, state, and national governments have responded to our industry during this crisis? Or what are your thoughts on how they have responded to our industry?
So I'm a big believer that, obviously the government, whether it be on a national level or local or state level, they're going to respond when they hear our concerns, right? So if we don't speak up and engage, then the ball really just doesn't get moving. So I think that as a whole, from the beginning, just because of so much, obviously this hit the entire industry very quickly. In the beginning, I think things were slow to progress. I think that it would have been very helpful for us to have some of this, PPP money and loan money come out. And I think that could have really set some owners and companies in a better financial position going forward. But that didn't happen. However, it did happen. When it did come out, it was very vague. So I think that a lot of money went to people who may not have needed it and didn't go to people who really needed it probably as quickly as they needed to survive. Going forward, I feel like the advocacy efforts that have been going on and just kind of pushing for more relief and things like that, I've seen and I've had some communications that things are going very well. I think that the associations, whether it be AHOA or the American Hotel Lodging Association, I'm in Texas, so I know Texas Lodging Association is also very active. Everybody's been very engaging and just really tried to help each other. We've all gotten on different platforms, whether it be educational webinars or just sharing our feedback and listening to members and people in the industry just really voice their concerns. And then we have those lobbyists, obviously, with our organizations go out there and really speak to those issues. So I'm optimistic, and I wouldn't say I'm completely satisfied, but I do think that the government is listening on every level. And I think it's because of the engagement that we have provided and just really letting them know that, we're going to need the help in order to survive.
So as you think of 2021, in a word, what's it going to be like for you and your teams? And I'll start with you, Nimisha.
The first word that comes to mind is transitional. I think a lot of us have just been trying to survive and, yes, pivot and figure out the path forward. So I think next year, 2021, will be a very transitional year with our team. We've already made the transition to doing mostly remote work in multiple states, which I love. I've been a proponent of that and a big technology advocate for years with my team and my firm, and now they're enjoying it. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of continued transitions in 2021.
Kristie.
Yeah, so I think Suzie and I were flipping through the same dictionary. Believe it or not, no lie, my word was transition. And I think my thought there was hopefully we transition from this triage mode that we've been in the last 6 months, and hopefully towards something that's more akin to early beginnings of a recovery. But at any rate, it'll be a transition, no matter what happens. So just because I can't have the exact same word, I would say when I think of my team, a word that comes to mind is unwavering. We're nimble. We've gotten accustomed to the unknown, and that's my hope, is that we'll have the strength and the fortitude to remain so in 2021, and I think we will.
John?
I hate the fact that everybody took the word that I was going to use. Okay, this is just nothing. I would kick off by saying I am cautiously optimistic about a trend for 2021. I also want to say that while it's cautiously optimistic, I am an eternal optimist, so you can take that with a grain of salt. But I think flexibility along with the cautiously optimistic is what's going to get us through 2021. And I do see some bright spots on the horizon, so I'll stick with those for right now.
And Nimisha.
Okay, so I think I would, for me and my team, I think the biggest thing or message that I would want to send out to them is just really having positive strength and optimism. Because we can sit here today, it's September, it's almost October, the year's about to end, and we're going to go into next year, and we very well may be sitting in the same seat. So we just don't know. So I think that if we just really try to focus on that and keep things going, whether it be next year or the following year, we'll all come out of this.
Well, thank you. This has been very enlightening and informative. I think what I came away with is, again, the overriding theme that I kept hearing throughout our conversation was communication. So our survival will depend on increased communication for our teams, for our industry, for our families, everything. It's just that in communication. So I really thought that really came out very, very clearly. So that's a great thing. So thank you. And with that, I'll say thank you. Thank you to the audience. And Wayne, back to you.
Thanks, Isaac. And thanks to all of our panelists, moderators, and sponsors for this year's Southern Lodging Summit presentation. Thank you for tuning in and supporting the Southern Lodging Summit. All of our proceeds go to support the American Hotel Lodging Association PAC, the Memphis Hotel Lodging Association PAC, and the Tourism Tennessee PAC. And starting in 2021, the Asian American Hotel Owners PAC. Mark your calendars for the 19th Annual Southern Lodging Summit to be held in the newly renovated Renaissance Convention Center here in Memphis on August 23rd and 24th, 2021. Be safe and see you then.